Welcome to Launch Code, a premier business podcast, starring Evan Hafer, Matt Best, and Jared Taylor.
Today we continue with part 2 of 3 with our conversation with Donnie Vincent.
How old are you now?
43.
Okay.
Yeah.
Minnesota the entire time, which we're coming out of the depths of our conversations that we were just having, but I want to kind of bring...
Yeah, so born and raised in Connecticut, and then I moved. I have a brother and sister who are both brutal drug addicts. And so when I was growing up, they could never find their way. And I had never done drugs and never was going to do drugs. All of my friends did drugs when I was growing up, but it just wasn't for me. And my parents thought that they would basically move me away from the drugs in Connecticut to wholesome Minnesota, where there are also plenty of drugs.
Right.
Yeah. And so we moved out here, but it was a great move for me because I could spend a lot more time outdoors here than I could in Connecticut. I still did. I still found wild places in Connecticut, but, I was playing around with snakes and turtles and frogs and all of that stuff. But when I came out here, I could actually hunt and fish and do all those things. And so I ended up going to school. I literally just looked, I would approach life completely differently now, I think. But I literally got biology degrees because I wanted to do something that allowed me to be outside and allowed me to contribute to wildlife and contribute to trying to make wild places better.
What was your family? Can you talk about that? Like how you grew up and like what'd your dad do? What'd your mom do? Did you guys have?
So my dad, he always worked, when I was a little kid, he worked for IBM. He just did like computer networking stuff. And my mom always had just kind of odd jobs. And we lived in a nice house. Like it wasn't anything that was degraded down or anything, but we lived in a nice house. And my brother and sister, I don't really speak with either of them. I don't speak with either of them anymore, but it was just brutal. Like I saw the way they treated my parents and saw the way they treated me, and it was just was not a very safe environment. It was something that kind of taught me to grow up angry. I grew up pretty angry and pretty violent, if you will. And so it just was not, I never felt protected, never felt a safety at home at all. And so, I just went screaming the other direction. I just said, I need to just distance myself from that and put my nose to the grindstone and pour myself into other things and move forward.
Well, when did you, how old were you when you went to Minnesota?
So we moved to Minnesota when I was in 10th grade.
Okay.
10th grade.
Yeah.
So that was a rough transition as well. Just, switching high schools and stuff like that and being a guy, and I ended up finishing high school in Big Lake, Minnesota, which was great. Like I have a lot of friends there, and it was a small graduating class of like 70, something like that. And all the kids were awesome. Like, I mean, there's definite contention there, when you're moving high schools, but everyone was great and teachers were great. And it was a good experience. I actually went back and spoke to the middle school a couple of times just because I was such an unsuccessful student, kind of. I got, there's just a lot of, I'm not going to say violence, but it was definitely,
Did you get in a lot of fights?
Yeah. I definitely had struggled to find my way. Yeah. And so I was very unsuccessful. And then no one ever thought I was going to go to college. And then I applied to the University of Minnesota, but I didn't take any advanced classes in high school, like no second languages, no algebra. I was in like basic math the whole time and like just categorized, right? Just like, and I'm not blaming anyone other than myself because I wasn't applying myself, or I didn't realize how to apply myself. Like I was just busy surviving with my family, right? And just trying to wrap my head around things. And my parents were struggling when we moved to Minnesota. Like I worked my ass off, and I gave all my money to my parents to help them make the mortgage. Like they weren't making the mortgage on their own. So I just busted my ass and literally handed my paychecks over to my mom and dad so they could, figure out their half. And And then as soon as I graduated high school, I needed to get out of there. And so I had a Labrador that I used for hunting, and she was awesome. This little lab named Claire, and like love of my life. And so when I moved out of my parents, I was looking for an apartment. I wasn't yet going to go to college, didn't have the money to do so. And so when I got out, I couldn't find an apartment that would take a dog. So ended up finding a little crappy house and buying it, and then eventually started working a couple jobs and saved enough money to go to college. And
what were you doing? Like, what kind of jobs were you doing?
I worked at a veterinary hospital, and working there as an assistant, like a technician, if you will, assisting the doctor in surgery and things like that. And then so I would leave there, and then I would go and work as a phlebotomist, drawing people's blood. The second half of the day, and then I would just do that to save money. And then I was going to school, and so it's busy.
Yeah, that's a lot different than I was envisioning for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah. So then I saw a brochure one day for the University of Minnesota College of Natural Resources, and there's a moose on the cover of the brochure. Yeah, I was a pretty lost soul when I was younger, and never felt very intelligent. Never felt like, I just felt like it was going to be an uphill battle. So I better button my shit down and just try to focus as much as I could and push forward. And so that was the other cleansing aspect of, I've never even actually talked about any of this, but that was the cleansing aspect of going to the wilderness also, because like that's where I felt completely at home. It was, like I think the last time you and I were doing a podcast with Matt Best, he was kind of asking, are you afraid of grizzly bears? Are you afraid of wolves or whatever? And I literally never have been. They've never entered that section of my mind. And I've been very lucky, because I've hunted Alaska. I don't know, I've been there 20 times with just my bow. Like I would go up there and I wouldn't even have a firearm with me, right? And so, but I saw this brochure and I applied to college, and the administration was like, there's no way in hell you're getting into this school. And so you have to, basically gave me 2 years of curriculum that I had to go and do before they would accept me into the program. So I went and did that, and then got into the program and went through that. And then right out of college, I studied tigers first. Was the first big gig that I got in Bangladesh and Nepal, which was so Indiana Jones, it wasn't even funny. Like I worked for a guy named David Smith. He's one of the top tiger ecologists in the world, and just a gnarly dude. And he literally, like, I was in his office, and he has white hair, and he'd always like purse his lips, and he pulled out this piece of paper, and he's like, okay, now Donnie, this is what I want you to do. I want you to fly from Minnesota. You're going to fly to Bangkok. You're going to fly to Tokyo, then Tokyo to Bangkok. You'll overnight in Bangkok, and then the next day you're going to fly to Jashore, Bangladesh, and then that's going to be the international airport, and you're going to see these gates there. You'll see all these guys with machine guns. You're going to go out the gates, and you're going to walk over to the domestic airport. And once you get, you're going to land in Dhaka. You're going to land in Dhaka. You're going to go through these gates. You're going to walk over to the domestic airport, and then you're going to fly down to Jashore. You'll land on a dirt strip. Just make your way into Jashore there, and just don't talk to anyone. Don't take a ride from anyone, and just sit there on the street corner, and I'll find you. And he wrote it all on a half sheet of piece of paper and handed it to me. And he's like, okay, I'll see you in Jashore in a couple of days. So I was just like, okay, like let's do this. And so I did all that. Flew to Tokyo, flew to Bangkok, overnight in Bangkok, and then flew to Dhaka. Once I landed in Dhaka, life got real in a hurry. Like lots of machine guns there, lots of very aggressive individuals. Beautiful country, awesome people, but it was just very real in a hurry. And so I actually left the airport in Dhaka and went to walk through these gates to walk over to the domestic airport, and this guard is like, no. If you walk out of these gates, like you see these guys in the towers, they're going to shoot you. This is a no walk zone. Like you can't walk here, right? People are not allowed to walk here. This is a protected area. And so I was like, okay, well, this is what I was told to do. He's like, no, you got to take a cab around this area to get to the other airport. So I was like, okay. So I did. I took a cab over there, or took a ride over there, and that's an entirely different story, because the cabbie would not take me, and I kept kind of engaging him, and there was a police officer, and he was paying attention to this, and he came over to me and he said, "What's the problem?" I said, "Oh, there's no problem. I'm just trying to get this guy to take me over." So he goes over to the cabbie and literally gives him, just smashes his face in with his forearm, just absolutely smashes his head against the window, and yells at him. And then he goes, "Okay, we're ready." Opens the door, I get in, and the cabbie drove me over to the other airport and didn't collect a fare, nothing. And then I just got out and got in a little airplane and flew down to Jashur and sat on a little dirt corner. And some other things happened in there. There's a lot of things happened really fast, and they're, not stories like you have, but pretty sensational things. And so I just sat there and waited for my professor to roll up, and he, all of a sudden, like 3 o'clock in the morning, here comes a Range Rover, and there he is. And from there we headed off into the jungle in a boat, and so it's pretty wicked. That was my first biology gig.
That's a good biology gig.
It was really good. Yeah.
That's an incredible biology gig. Honestly, that's fucking incredible.
It was wicked. And so Bangladesh, the southern portion of Bangladesh, is the world's largest mangrove swamp called the Sundarbans. Mm-hmm. And so that's where we did all of our research, was in the Sundarbans. Yeah.
And how long were you out there?
Just a couple months, just a month there. And then from there we went to Kathmandu. Mm-hmm. And then from there we went down to southern Nepal into the Royal Chitwan National Forest, Death Valley, they call it. And there was pretty cool, because I went to work every day on an elephant, because the grass was too high, and the tigers were big time, both in Bangladesh and Nepal. They have big time man-eaters, right? So like, they're taking people all the time.
What were you studying?
Tigers, Bengal tigers.
What were you,
so in Bangladesh, we were looking at true population. So there's this equation called the line transect study. So essentially, it's like you're counting every time you have an event with a tiger, that's counted as one. Whether it's a track, you see one, every little thing that reminds you of a tiger, whether it be an actual track or seeing one, or not reminds you but indicates a tiger, that's an event. And so then that's put into an equation, and there's, the equation takes in certain aspects of it being the same tiger or new tigers, and just comes up with some idea of what the population might be. And so there's all these canals, millions of miles of canals in Bangladesh. So we were driving down these canals in these little gondolas and looking for pug marks, tiger tracks, crossing in the mud, and mapping them out and trying to make, because they have huge poaching problems there, because local guys kill them and sell them to Asia. And then when we were in Nepal, we actually had tigers that were radio collared, and we were just looking at how they use their territory with relationship to males and females, and how they're utilizing their territory for food, and trying to see some relationship between villages that were near them and how they're using their natural habitat, because they were taking, they would take people and cattle and things like that. So
what's the population like? Like, I'm trying to grasp.
That's a great question. It's thousands, right?
Yeah.
It's thousands. It's not tens of thousands. It's thousands.
And what's the procreation cycle of a tiger? Like,
So
reproduction cycle.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, if you picture like a rotary phone. So it'll be, a male will service several females, right? So the females will have little territories around the outside, and the male will service several females, and then they, so then obviously the males would breed all these females, and then they'd have their kittens, and they raise them for 2 years or whatever, and then and then they'd go through that whole cycle, 2 to 3 years. And so it was wicked though. It was wicked to go to work every day on an elephant. It was just crazy.
And did you had to have seen
not once.
Not one.
Not once. Never saw a tiger. Not once. Not once. Literally saw. Like, could see with the telemetry, like the tiger's right there, literally right there. But the grass is so tall, like couldn't see.
Not
him.
once.
Not once. No. And I was actually not complaining about it, but I was like, man, I'm bummed that I'm not going to be able to see a tiger, or I didn't see a tiger. And one of the researchers that I was with, he's like, oh, I've been here for 6 years. I haven't seen one yet.
fucking 6 years.
Yeah, and they told a story. I wasn't there for this, but they told a story that a tiger started swimming across the canal in front of the boat, and so everyone had seen a tiger that was on the boat, and so they're trying to find this guy that had never seen a tiger, and he was in the bathroom. He had diarrhea, and so they were trying to hunt him down, and they finally got him down, and they got him, and and they literally got him out on the bow of the boat as the tiger was slipping into the jungle, and he didn't see any of it. He literally didn't see it.
That's
yeah.
That's fucking wild.
I know,
to me, man.
it's so weird because when you tell people like you're there working on tigers, they're like, "Oh my God, you got to see tigers in the wild," and you kind of have to just stare at your flip flops and say, "No,
no."
I
But you don't.
see one."
6 years though. I mean, if you caveat that with that story, I think it puts it in perspective.
Yeah.
And then thousands of tigers, but they're just not seen.
No, and the jungle is, it starts, there's the water, and then there's a little bit of like 5 feet of mud beach,
right.
And then it's a wall of vegetation. So,
right,
like I would see tiger tracks, so we would measure them by how the water would run into the track, right? So we would find tiger tracks that were just starting to dimple with water. So the tiger was, he was there 10 seconds ago, 15 seconds ago, 30 seconds ago. But you're standing there looking at a wall of vegetation. He's not gone. He's right there.
Right.
But you can't go looking for him.
Right.
Yeah, because he's gonna kill you and eat you.
That's fucking.
Because that's a totally different predatory animal than a bear.
Yeah.
Completely different. Big cats are completely. You are 100% on the menu.
Right.
Period. End of story. Like there is no, like I've been surrounded by packs of wolves and it's not even scary because you can almost see the look on their face that they know that going after you is a bad deal.
Right.
It's not going to end up well for them. Like they might kill you. They probably will kill you.
Right.
But it's not going to end well for them. Right. One of them is going to die. 2 of them is going to die, or at least they're going to get injured. And with the big cats, that's just not the case.
Yeah. They're
going to eat you.
I mean, but that makes sense because there's, I mean,
and people complain about this, right? And we talked about this earlier that I just had this guy write to me and say, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because I really don't know much about it. But this guy was upset about that Joe Rogan. I talked about lions, and so he wrote me on Facebook or Instagram I think, and he said, you don't know what you're talking about. You're kind of spreading poison, and I really, it's not that I don't know what I'm talking about, but I know the aspects of lion hunting that I don't really care for, and that's what I was speaking to. And then this gentleman said, well, you don't know, in Africa, lions are killing people, they're killing domestic livestock, and you know what? People love to value human life as though it's above animal life. And in some regards it is, but if you're human, in actual reality, humans are animals.
Right.
To the lion, we are nothing but a nuisance that is a predator to him or her, something that's taking up space of his or hers, something that's bringing in domestic animals to an easy kill for him or her, and then so is your son or daughter or wife or husband also is pretty easy prey. And so it is tragic when people are killed by lions. I completely agree with that, but it's also the natural progression of things. It's just like, for instance, this October, if I get killed by a bear, there's no sorrow to be had there. I was putting myself in the wilderness. I'm traveling amongst bears. If I happen to get mauled by a grizzly bear, killed and consumed by a grizzly bear, it's just the natural state of things. That's just how it went that day. Like that's reality.
Right.
Yeah. That's just how it goes.
I think everybody, at least I shouldn't say everybody, but when you put yourself in the food chain, and I think that's what we're talking about, which we are, but you're really immersing yourself in their environment for the most part. And the risks. Yeah. Like you definitely. I mean, there are a lot of people that might not understand the risks. I mean, the mountain biker in Northern California that gets gets taken down by a cougar.
Yeah, that's slightly different.
Slightly
right?
different.
That's a crossover of habitat there.
And it's also probably a lack of appreciation for the environment that they're in, and a lack of understanding, and a few other things, right? But it's still ultimately their fault.
Yeah.
But you definitively know the risks. And there's nobody. I mean, there's very few people that know them better. So and you're taking an active choice. You're the one making the choice. I think when we talked about it, I think we talked about it for a few minutes, where, you know, professional soldiering is the same way, where, you know, you're making an active choice. You're a participant in this event, and, you know, people will mourn, but in all actuality, you're a volunteer several times over, and somewhat you're choosing the path that you're on. Mm-hmm. And is it's sad for sometimes the family, but not for the individual, because they've made that choice ultimately. Mm-hmm. And the violence of a death, I think, is sometimes, you know, those are the things I think that that I think about only in the context of that person was in great pain for, you know, a short amount of time before their departure, which is unfortunate. But they've also been a volunteer several times over, right? And I'm not devaluing it. No. I'm saying it's definitely in the special operations context of the military. You know, the regular, when I say, you know, the person that enlists for college money and is on his second year or his first year, he doesn't quite understand the environment that he's stepping into. It's one of ultraviolence that can be taken away. And it's also been misportrayed by the, you know, movies. So there's a context of heroism and a lot of other things that people think, but that's not reality. And I think if people just understood the environments that they were putting themselves in more effectively, we would have much greater understanding. Like, we're not talking about, you know, war and hunting necessarily, but it's just a greater understanding of their environment.
Yeah, it's and it is sad. Like when you have people that when something tragic happens, whether that be, you know, a soldier having his life taken, which I can't speak to at all. I've never been in any sort of military action, but if you put yourself in position of that soldier, I imagine that's very painful for the family. Like they're thinking about the final moments, and that's what's probably really haunting them, and the fact that nobody wants to die doing their job. But like you said, your job was engaging an enemy, right? That was you know, none of the guys in your company or whatever you called it when you guys went over there, you know, nobody got handed their gun when they were getting off the helicopter and said, whoa, what are we doing?
What are we doing?
Here?
Right. Well, I thought I was going to be handing out chow.
Yeah, what do I need a gun for?
Yeah. Right.
So you guys were super trained, ultra trained for this, and
and a lot of us, I think we chose that because that's what we wanted. You know, like that's what we wanted. That's, I mean, and to me, I think not to turn the conversation whatsoever into me, but it's there was a certain aspect of wanting a finality. You know, I think there was not a death wish whatsoever, but I never expected to leave Iraq. I felt like I was going to leave Iraq in a box.
Yeah.
But that was definitely a choice that I made, and there was a kind of a degree of disappointment when I left on my last trip, and it's like, fuck, I guess I didn't die here. So yeah, I'll go try to die somewhere else.
So does that so in some regard, do you think that is not necessarily what you just described, but do you think that's much more when you went into it, you were all in? Like you pushed your chips to the center of the table, and you're riding this out to the end of the game, and you just didn't expect to be the chip winner at the end. Like you were just completely engrossed in the experience, and then, you know, your final ride home, you're like, oh, son of a gun, I finished it out.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot. There's a backstory, which is years and months of just kind of accepting the fact. And I think that, you know, in March of 2003, I think I just accepted the fact that I was going to die there, and, you know, wasn't trying to necessarily get killed every year after that, but I just accepted this was probably going to be the place that I die. And I kind of wrapped my mind around that and was not only prepared, but probably just in the context of mental understanding, just to get up and do your job every day.
Did you, and I don't even know if I can ask this, but did you ever have an instant, you don't have to tell a story. I'm not asking that, but did you ever have an instance where, somebody just simply missed? Like,
oh yeah.
Like it was like where you sit there and you look at your buddies and you go, like that could have been the one.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that you get comfortable, but you don't think about it right necessarily at that point. You think about it later. You're like, oh shit.
Sure.
Oh, that was close. That was close. And then you don't think about it. You know? And then you just because if you think about it too much, you're like, okay, well. Yeah. But or you start analyzing it, like, okay, like you're looking at a play on a field, like, okay, well, what could I have done differently?
Sure.
But I think that, being a conscious, like, and that's being conscious. And I think there are a lot of people that they're not conscious. They go through life, they don't really make decisions. They let life make their decisions.
Yeah.
And then they find themselves in environments that they're not appreciative of. They don't quite understand. So in the context of this conversation, like, you'll find people being mauled by a fucking grizzly bear on a hike because they think they can feed it fucking berries or something, right? Where it's like, you have no clue as to the context of your situation, and ultimately you are the one to blame for this. Yeah. It's not the bear, it's not the predator. It's you. Yeah. Because you had no understanding of this situation, and you just blithely fucking walk through life just letting walls decide your path because you bump into one and you turn fucking left.
That's a great analogy.
And
that's like sometimes people they'll ask me the same thing. Like, obviously, again, it's not the stuff that you were doing, but people say, "Oh my God, you're in Alaska without a gun," and you have a death wish, and I've just never ever. The thing that scares me, or the thing that, like, I've had several instances where I, like you just described, I'll sit back in camp later that night and go, oh, like, I just dodged a major bullet today, or, yesterday or whatever, and start to think about all the elements that had to happen for me to live in a particular instance, and realize that, I narrowly escaped death in a certain instance, whether it be an airplane ride or, for me, it's more often it's weather, right? It's weather, the one that's what catches up to you in a hurry. Right. And I've had a couple of days where I probably should have wanted to, I wanted to stop walking, wanted to stop and just sit down and go to sleep, if you will. But yeah, it's I can definitely appreciate that idea of putting yourself out there, and I think that's the reward, honestly. I mean, I'm not speaking to the stuff you did, but, I just don't want to overstep my boundaries, because I have some idea in my mind. I've painted a picture of the things that you've been through in my mind, but it's just a tale that I've told myself. So, the stuff that I've done, though, is it's much easier to conceptualize reality, I think, for people. Like, they, getting attacked by a bear, or being in an airplane crash, or getting swept away in a river, drowning, dying from exposure. These are all things that are way more easy to wrap your head around than what you're doing.
Thinking back on, my wilderness adventures, I have found myself in the worst situations based on laziness and poor decision making, right? And when I say laziness, it's like, okay, I know I think I can cut up and over that saddle, for instance, right? And it's like, it's pretty steep, and I know that there's like a piece that might be kind of technical, but the other route is fucking brutal
and long.
And that's where I find myself in the fucking worst scenarios, where I'm like 3/4 into this. I can't fucking go back down because it's actually harder
That's
to go back down.
Way harder.
Yeah,
It's way harder. It's
so
easier. It's really quick if you want it to be. Super, super fast.
It's super fast.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, I'm 3/4 into this. I'm committed. And even going into this, like I'm committing to this, but I know I'm going to be fucking, I know I'm going to be scared.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to be scared out of my fucking mind.
Yeah. 100%.
But feeling the context of life on a finger
Yeah.
in a situation where
Yeah.
you're like, God damn it, I should have taken the longer route.
Yep.
Those are that like I know that so fucking well because I'm like, this is my fucking laziness that got me into this, and I would trade this finger right here for that fucking long route right now. I would do that.
It's funny that you say that because other than airplanes, and airplanes too, every scenario I've been in that's been horrible and dangerous, other than rafts. Rafts is one that I've never been in control of, right? If I'm in a sweeper and flip the raft, that's just bad boating. That's just not having technical skill of, and I run into those situations still as, you take on a task, like you just said, taking the short route, you take on a task and then, you have to do something for the first time at some point. And so like you realize that you're out of your set of skills and you get caught with your hand in a cookie jar. So that's one thing, but almost every other dangerous scenario that I've ever been in has been laziness or having a beautiful day and just saying, well, okay, so I have to go, like 17 miles today. So I mean, it's not going to rain or snow or anything today. So I'll just take this super light gear, go really fast because I'll get there in no time. And then, a couple of hours into it, a blizzard hits and it was a really bad decision. Really bad.
You're referencing one specific event.
Yeah, I had an event where we killed a sheep in the Chugach Mountains of Alaska. Really rough place. And it was beautiful, beautiful bluebird day. And we were hiking some of the meat out to get the meat out in time because it was pretty warm in there. And then we were going to come in the next day and get our camp out. And we were just having it wasn't that we couldn't carry our camp too. It was just that we were having fun, like enjoying the mountains. And we'd killed early in the hunt. So we had 10 days and we killed on day 3. So we were just enjoying ourselves. So a friend of mine hiked out he wore cotton army fatigues, which was a bad decision all the way around, and a fleece pullover. And I had North Face tech wear technical pants on, but just really light. And then a Patagonia, like R3 synthetic, pullover, zippy, like nothing to it. Hiked out, everything was great. Hiking back in, ran into a couple other sheep hunters and they said, hey, where are you guys going? And we said, we're going up here. And they said, it's a blizzard right now. Like you guys are gonna have to walk a long ways in a blizzard to get to where your camp is. We saw where your camp was. And we kind of looked up there and we're like, yeah, okay, cool. Thanks for the heads up. Like we'll pick our way up there and we'll see what it's like. And if it's bad, we'll turn back. It was really bad. And we pushed towards camp and, I couldn't feel anything. I could not feel anything. Literally, this is going to sound very crude. The only thing that I could feel was my testicles. And I could feel water dripping off the back of my testicles was the only thing that I could feel basically from my waist down. And we were falling down every couple of steps. And when you sat down, it felt great. It felt really good to sit down. And you just like, oh, this feels like, this is almost orgasmic to sit down. Like it's really peaceful. I completely see how people pass away when they're hypothermic. I felt those stages of advancement. And the guy that I was with, he would just always say, we would do it to each other, but we would just pick something that was like 30 or 40 yards away, a rock or something. And he'd say, hey, I bet you can't get to that. And we'd lumber up there, and then I'd say, okay, see that big rock? Okay, I bet you can't get to that. We would just do that all the way up there. And we picked our way to the camp and got to our tent and stripped down naked and got into our tent and freaking huddled together. And we freaking shivered for probably 8 hours, something like that. It was, I don't know how close we were to death, but it was, it sucked. It was really scary, super scary. I'll never forget it. And it was just a bad decision. Like had we brought our down with us and had we brought our rain gear, it would have just been a walk in a blizzard.
Right.
And literally 2 little tiny pieces, a little rolled up set of rain pants and jacket, and a little tiny puff jacket and puff pants. And it would have been just a cool story.
Yeah.
That's it.
It would have been like, oh, yeah, it's a hike.
Neat.
Yeah.
But people, and people think it has to be cold out, for that to happen. It doesn't, right? You read stories about people dying of hypothermia in the Caribbean, right? And you get wet and your body loses a lot of energy because, this idea of entropy, right? Your body's heating all of the elements around it and just sucks everything out of you. So it's the exact same thing. And even some of the airplane rides I've been in, we can either take the long way around the mountain range, or we can zip through this pass.
Right.
And you go up through the pass and, it's socked in. So, and we can't turn around because we're cliffed out on both sides. So try to help me pick our way through this. Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's even fucking scarier, man. Holy shit.
I have had some. I flew out one time with a pilot who basically flew the whole time with his door open, like looking at the ground, following a stream out because we couldn't see the mountain edges. So he flew with his driver's side door open, looking at the ground.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like
and the whole thing is just so he could get us out to his schedule to pick up this guy over here literally like getting a cheeseburger at a drive-through. Like, okay, Evan, you do the fries. I'm frying the cheeseburger. Like, get this guy out of here.
Right.
Like he's literally treating as though we're a cab fare.
Right.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and how many wrecks are there in Alaska?
Too many.
Way too many.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Like if you actually, down here when an airplane crashes, it makes the news,
God.
up there. Nah, I mean, it might make the news if it happens near a city or something like that, but there's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah. I mean, I read some statistic somewhere. We've got a little Cessna 172 now. So we bought one not too long ago. The
Black Rifle bought one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right on.
And
Sick Mana doesn't have an airplane yet.
Well, I can't really say that this was like a huge expense. It was actually more expensive to get it airworthy than it was to purchase the plane.
Sure.
Even though we did fly it out of Atlanta to here.
Yeah.
But we wanted, we wanted something that we could futz around in out here in Texas, because I ultimately want to be able to fly for a lot of different reasons, like as I transition away from the business, because eventually it'll happen, right?
Yeah.
There's a point to all of this, and it's not to actually make more money. It's actually just to buy my own freedom back. Like I'm just buying my time back.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
And I want not to transition this, but the plane represents a lot of different things where it's like, transitioning away from the military, I transition in here. But the plane for us was like, I got to learn, and this is a relatively safe place to learn how to fly too, because it's flat as fuck. The air is super consistent. You can land it,
That plane you can land almost anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
And so Jared Taylor and we were like, hey, let's buy this plane. It was super inexpensive, and we'll learn how to fly. And eventually, this story is leading to an end, which is like, man, I've got to be able to get into the backcountry.
Yeah.
And I want to do it by myself, because I'm too much of a fucking control freak to be able to, like, and when I say that, like, I can fly with other people, don't get me wrong, but I've flown a lot too in the mountains of Afghanistan and all around the fucking place. And I'm like, man, I want to be able to do that, just to be able to make sure that if I want to get in the plane and fly somewhere, I don't want to schedule it with somebody else. And I want to be able to make good decisions. Yeah. Really consistent, conservative decisions based on, like, no shit. Okay. Hey, you know what? I don't need to go anywhere today. Yeah. You know what? I don't need to go anywhere today.
Yeah. I'm going to go kayaking.
Yeah. I'm going to go kayaking. I'm going to sit by the fire and fucking read a book. Yeah. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to fly. Yeah. Like, that's all I'm going to do. Yeah. And, cause I know that, and I think you do too, like, everybody isn't created equal. And, you get a bad pilot, that's it's the same kind of odds as like running the fucking roulette table sometimes.
Yep.
It's like, man, you get a bad pilot that makes bad decisions, and ultimately laziness and bad decision making.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody is susceptible to that because I think that I'm a pretty consistent good decision maker, but I'm still susceptible to laziness and bad decision making, just like everybody else.
Especially when it's tied to, when it's tied to money.
Yeah.
Like, and some of these guys are running a business, and
Yeah.
there's been I've heard horror stories. I've had a couple of instances myself but I went through and done my homework and picked good pilots, but still, I mean, I flew with a guy last year. I won't name him, but unbelievable pilot, unbelievable pilot. But even with him, we were landing on a little tiny airstrip. And when I say airstrip, I mean, it was a little tiny hill that led to a cliff.
Right.
And we needed to come in really shallow and basically hit the face of the hill to stop before the cliff. And when it went well, it was great. But on one of the days, the wind switched. So now we had to take off basically downhill, right? And it was just, even looking at it didn't add up in your mind.
Right.
Like, the airplane's going this way, there's a hill right there, like this. Okay, so when you're a little kid and you got a board and a ball and you're making a ramp, you're like, hey, this isn't going to work out. Like, when you're looking at it, this is not going to work out. And it nearly didn't. Nearly didn't. It did work out, but it nearly didn't. And so, like, when you're taking off, you can't, it's like doing a backflip on a motocross bike.
Yeah.
Like, at some point, you're all in.
Yeah.
And so when you go down a runway, you can't go halfway and be like, it didn't feel good. Like, you're full throttle. No matter
committed.
what. You're committed.
Yeah.
And so you just kind of, like, appreciate his talents and the airplane that you're in that's made out of tape.
Yeah.
And you let it buck. Like, I'm sure, like, when you get established, I'm sure you're going to buy a Super Cub for when you go back to Idaho.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And that's what I was in. And so, but it's an adventure. It's always, but that's the jam, right? That's the game. Like, my funeral is going to be a party.
Yeah.
It must be, because that's how I've lived my life. And I don't know when I'm going to die, but we'll just leave it at that. But I don't know if I'm going to die of I don't feel like I'm going to die of old age. I don't feel like it. But
if you do, is it going to be if you die of old age, is it going to be that big of a deal?
No, no, not at all. I mean, that might be a celebration in and of itself.
Yeah.
And hopefully I get to look back on a bunch of photos and film, and even when I can't remember that I have to, wipe my backside, that, so people can remind me of the things that I did if it goes that far. But I certainly don't want to waste any more days, and I don't feel like I've wasted many, but I definitely feel like I'm happy with who I am. I'm happy with where I am. I'm really happy with the men I get to share my life with, and women that I get to share my life with. But the crew that I work with is just empowers me every single day. They just inspire me beyond no end. Like, I of course wouldn't be where I am without William and Kyle and Casey and some of the others that have come and gone. But I'm extremely thankful that I get to work with these gentlemen, and that they haven't, these guys get job offers to leave me.
They have to.
Daily.
Yeah.
Daily. And
Right.
and I've had really wealthy guys try to steal them away with, with big dollars, and I've had other guys that have doing something similar, and they say, like, so how do you keep them?
Right.
Like, how do you do it? Like, how is it that you keep your team together? And I don't know. We just keep doing really kick-ass work, and we believe in each other. But yeah, I'm just really thankful of the guys that I get to work with, and the work that I get to do, and the people that I get to share it with. And of course, sitting here talking to somebody like you, like, I feel like I should be interviewing you, right? Like, I'm not denouncing myself, but you're the fascinating one here, right? You've lived this life that is just, like, transcending, almost fictional. And so, It's a pleasure to be able to sit down and even in the truck ride over here, and even being invited to your home and being invited to your office and coming down here and talking business with you. Those are the things that like I'm extremely aware of and thankful for.
Well, that's a great compliment. It's not even close to the end of the podcast, by the way, because it seems like it's a bookend.
No, I'm not.
We're going
no.
for the fucking long haul.
No, I'm not.
It's so interesting.
And thank you.
It's so interesting to me because like I think that I owe people kind of a unpacking, because like I am so respectful in the sense of, and I don't want this to turn into some fucking stroke fest. That's not what I'm that's not what I'm into. But like I chose a different life path. You know, I did, and but I kind of sold out in my mind in a way, where it was like when I see you and I'm like, man, and I'm not saying like, hey, I could have chosen a different life and I could have been Donnie Vincent. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, man, I did this for my adult life, and it's something that I did. I can't necessarily say that I'm even proud of it. It was something that I did that I needed to do. But if I was really being like true to myself, even if I could roll back the clock to 20 something years old, I would have stayed in the wilderness. I would have, because I fought it. I fought it fucking daily, if not weekly. Like it was something that I felt like I had to serve my country. And don't get me wrong, I think it's extremely commendable.
Oh, yeah.
But I've also gone through an entire different evolutionary cycle where I'm like, I was a tool.
I'm sure when you went into it, there was a nobility to it. And I'm sure when you came out, I'm sure the picture you painted, like most of us, all of us, I'm sure the picture you painted did not fit what you experienced when you came out.
No, because I bought into a fictionary tale. Yeah.
Which they sell really well.
They do.
Yeah, they sell really well.
They sell really well, and I bought into, after a few years I knew that. But it was also as institutionalized, to a certain degree. I felt like I would find it, like, you feel like you're going to find the fucking Shangri-La or some shit, but you never do. You just see more death, more carnage, more destruction. I'm not a pacifist whatsoever, but I'm probably closer to a pacifist in my life today than I ever have been, just in the context of these are wars of choice. Like Afghanistan is a war of choice. Iraq was a war of choice. Yeah, they ran some planes into the towers, and I'm not discrediting that, but we fucking stomped them into moon dust, and we could have done it quickly. 15 fucking years ago, and proved a point and crushed them like a cockroach under our boot. And we could have done that 15 fucking years ago. And the rest of this exercise has been, in my mind, truly an exercise of moving wealth from the taxpayer into the military industrial complex. And when you wake up one morning and you're like, oh, okay, so I'm part of that transfer of wealth. And I should have been spending a fucking decade of my life like running fucking ridges and doing the things that I was really like happy doing. I think that's what that's a realization that I came to. I came to it in the middle of the Frank Church several years ago, where I was like, oh, fucking shit. Yeah. Like I looked up, and I can tell you, like, and I know like certain events in my life. I know like the point, the place. Yeah. Like I was knee deep, like probably 2 months into just, rowing boats and banging some hippie chick on the fucking river for like 2 months, and it was great. It was like, oh yeah. Oh, so this is what life is all about. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this is great.
But like, I mean, and I completely hear what you're saying, but the reason the things that you chased going in really were defining who you were and are, right? The differences that you were chasing, the differences that you were going to make and did make, were sensational. And so, but it's difficult to conceptualize because I agree with you. I have nothing to do but agree with you because it's an extremely valid point, but it's also it's difficult to talk about because of so much investment by you and so many others, and some that lost their lives. To just reducing it down to what it may actually be is makes it even a tiny bit more unbearable to think about.
I'm not discrediting it whatsoever.
Of course not.
I'm just saying from my point of view, which I'm nothing. We're less than a grain of sand in the whole context of this big beach. And at the end of the day, I have one opinion of fucking, millions of billions of other, like we're nothing. And so I'm not right.
Yeah.
There's no way I can be right, actually. Statistically, there's no way I can be right. But I have my opinion because I have a fucking free floating connection of fucking electricity that allows me to make fucking noises come out of my mouth.
I appreciate it. Yeah. I mean, the conversation that we had in the truck on the way over here, which is similar to the one we're having now. I'd never really heard it. I've heard people that weren't in the military organize it in that fashion, talk about it and as far as the business side of things, but I'd never really heard somebody active or retired speak of it in that manner. I have a couple of friends that have done really sensational things, much like yourself, and they don't talk about it, but I see the very words that you're saying, I see on their face. Yeah. And so,
well, service to your country is something even to me, I love America. I love it. I'm tried and true, and that's something I can never just discount in this atmosphere of democracy and capitalism. Like, I love it. I love the country because all things created equal on this fucking, 70 some arm scale, we're pretty heavily weighted in the aspect of the individual. It's fucking pretty cool because you get to choose, right?
Yeah.
And I love what it stands for. But there are things, and obviously, right? Like we can talk about this for fucking hours, but there are things that I fucking hate about this country, and it's not that I hate the country whatsoever. I love the country. I love it. Like, I'll bleed for it. I've forfeited, my time, my freedom, but I've also earned the right to be able to go, yeah, I don't like this, and this. And, when I see the country just being exploited in the sense of, if you're only chasing a dollar, like, and that's like the business sense of this whole thing where it's like, if you're only chasing a dollar, it's a hollow, fruitless endeavor where it will never yield you the fruit that you're after.
Yep.
It will never do it.
Never. I was reading, I was actually reading the book that you recommended that I read.
Principles.
Yeah. Which was kind of freaking me out and depressing me a little bit.
Ray Dalio.
Yeah.
He's a crazy dude.
Yeah. And some of the things that he was talking about, I just finished the 5th chapter. So I'm just there's like 170 chapters.
I don't know, like 500 or it's a fucking encyclopedia.
Yeah. So I just finished the 5th chapter, but it's depressing on how, not depressing, but just hear him talking about this tremendous wealth that him and some of his friends have built, and then 12 months later, 13 months later, the filing for bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And then building tremendous wealth again, and I'm realizing that's his hunting.
Yeah.
That's his military, if you will. And because I'm hearing about like the wealth that he's talking about, and I'm like, oh my word, I would have cashed out long, long ago and done little to nothing afterwards, but I would have done great things of my own passion. I would have chased things that were not the market, but I'm reading this thing and I hear this story building up, and he's, monetizing all these, looking at hog commodities, and then so now I'm looking at corn commodities because we're going to feed the hog, and then I'm looking at so now I'm reading the weather to grow the corn to feed the hog. So he's now adding up this recipe to wrap his head around buying hog bellies or whatever it is, however you portion buying hogs. But he's literally looking at all the metrics. He's looking at the weather, which is going to dictate the agriculture, which is going to dictate the price of pork when it comes to market. He's looking at all this stuff, and it was really cool to kind of see everything be broken down that way. And then, and then they buy silver.
Yeah.
I think it was silver low, and it jacks up, and they sell it. Like, he sells out and makes a pile of money, but then his buddy stays in it and loses everything. And it's just like, I was tense just reading this thing, it's like these guys just chasing. He's not chasing dollars. He was chasing knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And even the game, like the portion I just finished with where he was talking about where he had went on all these news channels and talked about how a big crash was coming, and how his arrogance of, he was looking at the trends. And so the trends that he had looked at with his computer, with his algorithm, the trends that he was looking at dictated that, a crash is coming. Like, this recipe, we have the eggs, we have the batter, we have frosting, son of a bitch, somebody's going to make a cake.
Yeah.
And so he went on all these news stations, like, somebody's going to make a cake, yeah. And then nobody made a cake. And no crash. And then he looked like such a fool, because he let his ego and he was sure that this was going to happen. And that's when he kind of realized that nothing is a sure bet.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing's a sure bet. And so he started looking at all these things, but it was just these guys that are chasing, like, I just have never chased money in that regard. And to that point, like, I get, I don't know, 20 letters a day from guys saying, how do I do what you do? How do I break into the industry? How do I work in the hunting industry? And I have no answer for that or them whatsoever. There is no recipe to bake this cake to predict I have no prediction of doing this, none whatsoever. It's just, it's almost as though the job will find you. I mean, if you just want to work in the hunting industry, if you have any talent whatsoever on anything, you'll find a job.
Right.
Like, if you're smart, if you work hard, if you know how to run a camera, if you know how to balance a checkbook, if you know how to design something, engineer something, any skill at all, that's all the hunting industry is. If you want to hunt for a living, there is no such job.
Right.